And good evening to you. Thank you for tuning in to Atlanta News First Plus here. We're streaming the first alert forecast this evening. A sharp start this evening at 8 p.m. We're going to chat for the next maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes talking about the weather that we had this weekend and maybe some subtle changes going into the new week. Again, I'm First Alert Meteorologist Cutter Martin. Thank you for tuning in and for watching. If at any time you have weather questions, comments, you need some clarification, let's make the most out of this ANF Plus stream. You can reach out to us on YouTube. That's one of several places that we're streaming on right now. Atlanta News First. Give us a like and a follow, and you can be alerted to streams just like this one. Latest news headlines, breaking news coverage, and of course, the first alert forecast. You can also text us, 470-777-WANF. That's 470-777-9263. If you have any weather questions, comments, concerns, and maybe you're watching on Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, and the First Alert Weather app, Atlanta News First app, you can simply text, at the same time that you are watching, and we'll keep you covered. Going to go ahead and get to the forecast outside right now. Temperatures are cooling. It was warmer earlier. In fact, still though 70 as of 8 p.m. At Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. That temperature taken about 10 minutes ago. Of course, current time 8:02 locally. Typically, we get our hourly observation 7:52, 7:53 in this case. So pretty recent data, but do notice how much cooler it is just to the west in Carrollton. In the upper 50s, 60 in Athens, 59 Helen, 54 already in LJ, even south of town, Griffin in the mid-50s. So we're hanging on in this type of a weather setup to all of the warmth in the city of Atlanta. May have heard this term before, if not urban heat island. All of the pavement we have in the city on a sunny day like what we have had, the heat, of course, is held onto the pavement, and then after sunset, it only slowly, releases back up into space, and as part of that process, it kind of emits outward and impacts the local environment. That is why the city of Atlanta is often in this weather setup much warmer than surrounding areas, and we have seen this night after night for the past, 3, 4, 5 days as we've gone through this cool spell, and then especially coming out of this cool spell as temperatures begin to moderate and begin to warm back up. Live look outside from Centennial Olympic Park, looking across the park back towards the bends. It's a gorgeous evening. Again, temperatures are cooling. Already a little chilly outside of the perimeter core of the city. I would say getting cooler and will be jacket worthy before too long. And I think many of us wearing jackets and coats out the door tomorrow morning. It will be a chilly start tomorrow, maybe not quite as cool as this morning. The low in Atlanta was in the lower 50s. I think that tomorrow morning will be similar, maybe a degree or so warmer, going 53 for Hartsfield-Jackson. 46 down in Griffin, 42 LJ, 47 in Helen, 44 in Carrollton, 48 in Eatonton. And now that we've kind of reached the few-minute mark, 3 minutes or so in this Atlanta News First Plus stream, I want to remind you, if you do have questions, maybe about events coming up this week, maybe you have specific questions about how your commute may or may not be impacted, when it may rain again, Atlanta News First on YouTube. You can give us a like and a follow, or just comment on this specific thread, or you can text us, 470-777-9263. So we're cooling off this evening, and it will be a chilly start to your Monday morning, though still a gorgeous one out there without many weather issues across North Georgia and Metro Atlanta. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and pull up that morning commute forecast. Of course, it's a Monday morning. It's nice when the forecast cooperates, and I think tomorrow morning it most certainly will. Now, lots of sunshine. So if you're an I-20 commuter in particular, those east and west-oriented roadways, so much sunshine, such a bright drive in. If you're headed eastbound into that rising sun, it's going to be a very bright morning. This time of year, very important to wear the sunglasses, lower those shades while driving, because it's extra kind of glaring the sunshine is as you get through the morning commute, especially if you're commuting right around sunrise. If you're a later commuter, not quite as bad. But again, that's about the only thing we're watching for you. It's very typical for this time of year, nothing crazy. And if you've been, commuting day in and day out, this is something you're used to, both in the fall and in the spring. We are going to continue to warm back up tomorrow. A chilly start to the day. Jackets, maybe some coats. But if your students are back at school, APS I know is back after fall break tomorrow. We will be warming quickly, shedding those layers. We're back to short sleeves by recess time, by afternoon time. So remind them to bring the jacket home with them, because it will continue to warm up. That warming trend is now well underway, and another little boost in our temperature out the door tomorrow morning, topping out tomorrow in the upper 70s, much like we did today. So we're not going to just, exponentially keep warming. We're not talking 90s or anything in the forecast, but back into the lower 80s as we get into the middle of the work week across North Georgia and Metro Atlanta. Tomorrow, though, we're looking like upper 70s in the city of Atlanta, expanding that view, showing you high temperatures across the rest of North Georgia. Much the same. Again, no huge changes from today. Most of us upper 70s, maybe a degree or two above average. Should say several degrees above average. A normal high is 73. Bumped Atlanta's high temperature to 79 tomorrow. The actual high temperatures have been just running a little bit warmer than what some of the guidance, the data, those computer models that we talk about, we've been running a little bit warmer than what they've been suggesting. So going just a little bit warmer tomorrow afternoon. High temperature today estimated to be 78. We already got our first climate report in. We'll get our second, confirmed report in by 8:30, but I don't anticipate too many changes. Our high temperature likely will go down on today's date as 78 degrees. 79 your forecast tomorrow. 80 in Rome. 80 in Eatonton. Most of us were in the upper 70s today, so another slight climb, little jump up in our temperature by 1 or 2 degrees, and certainly across the board here, warmer than it typically is, high temperature-wise, on an October 21st afternoon. Today's the 20th, tomorrow's the 21st, and you may notice that number upper left-hand corner, if you watch Atlanta News First frequently, has been declining, getting cooler, and that's because we're getting deeper into fall. So this is back, decently above average, and likely to remain above average for the next several days, and really aided this warm-up by a lot of sunshine. No rain in the first alert forecast, hardly a cloud to speak of, so sun prevails, dry weather prevails. We're now more than 20 days without measurable rainfall at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. It is possible we could get through the month of October without any rain being recorded at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Now, that's the official climate site for Atlanta, so it's possible that Atlanta could go the entire month of October without any measurable rain. If that happens, number one, it will be the driest October on record, and number two, could be the driest month on record altogether ever, at least since records have been kept officially for the city of Atlanta, because, October is usually a very dry month for us. It is our driest. So having a drier month is certainly not unusual. A dry weather pattern, a sunny weather pattern, not at all unusual. But the duration, is starting to stack up there. We're starting to see conditions really dry out across North Georgia, dry out across Metro Atlanta, and it does look like that dry pattern will continue through the duration of the work week. Maybe some subtle changes as we get into the back half of this coming weekend on into early next week. Not looking like a soaker, not looking like it's going to be particularly widespread of a rain, but maybe just enough to give us a trace, 0.05, a tenth, which would still make it a very dry October, but it would technically, take away the record from this month. It would knock it back several spaces, not in kind of the top 1 or 2 of driest of October. Something we'll be watching, something we have our fingers crossed for, hoping for a little bit of rain, but in general, a very dry weather pattern continues. Mornings trend a little warmer as well. However, air is still dry. The heat that accumulates during the afternoon, to an extent, it's able to escape back into space. Ideal conditions for big ranges in temperature by our standards between morning and afternoon. Typically, we only warm 18, 20 degrees during the day in Atlanta. So if you have a low at 60, it's very normal to have a high of 80. And we have some of that here, but we're going to take it a little bit beyond that. Highs in the lower 80s and lows in the upper 50s. So that's a bit more of a range, a diurnal range, as they call it, than what we typically see in North Georgia and Metro Atlanta. But soil is dry, the air is dry. So what you would typically expect, in the plains or further west, bigger range in temperature is kind of what we're seeing in this particular weather setup. Now, who is seeing the rain? It's the Greater Antilles. Hurricane Oscar now weakening. Earlier had sustained winds of 80 miles an hour, now sustained winds of 75 miles an hour, making landfall in eastern Cuba. Of course, impacts much the same. Not a big difference between 80 mile per hour sustained winds and 75 mile per hour sustained winds. Forecast has not really changed. Again, making landfall, that will help weaken the system, and then encountering quite a bit of wind shear, that will help weaken the system, and basically the same front that delivered some cooler weather to us will kind of help scoop this system and shove it out into the southwestern Atlantic and have it moving away from the United States and kind of losing eventually some of those tropical characteristics as it moves away from the United States and away from Georgia. And if you have any travel plans, even to South Florida, you're good. However, Bahama plans, Eastern Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos, maybe even the Dominican Republic. They had some heavy rain previously with this storm, slowly making its way through the southwestern Atlantic. Could be some minor issues there. Call your airline, call your carrier, your cruise line, check in with them. But again, in South Florida, no direct impacts. But something, a little bit more choppy, a little bit more severe of a condition as you get into the Bahamas. And, of course, Cuba obviously heavily impacted by this Category 1 hurricane as it makes landfall. Back home, though, just sunshine, the warm weather. It doesn't look like we have any questions coming in on YouTube. Atlanta News First is the account that we're streaming on, nor do we have questions texted in. Of course, not too surprising. A pretty straightforward first alert forecast. Lots of sun, warmer afternoons, still cool mornings. Not really any rain to speak of until maybe Sunday. Slight chance of rain back in the forecast. I want to remind you, you can always grab a check of the forecast in the First Alert Weather app and at AtlantaNewsFirst.com. Also, I'm going to be joined by Joyla Nakrin starting at 10 p.m. Atlanta News First on Peachtree TV, Atlanta CW affiliate, and then we are back live on Atlanta News First, WANF, tonight for the late news at 11 p.m. You can always grab a check of that First Alert forecast in the weather app. If you can't stay up with us tonight, have a wonderful evening, great work week, enjoy the nice mornings, enjoy that sunshine.